Welcome to Cafe Racer Garage. I am Dan, giving you the skills and inspiration that you need to build a motorcycle that you can be proud of. And today is a hot, humid summer's day. I've got a ton of work to do, so this video is going to be jam-packed full of goodies. Like custom side fascia plates, setting the paint lines for the tank, making a breather adapter, tidying up the wiring, custom brake reservoir. And unfortunately, after rebuilding this engine, I found a pretty bad oil leak, which I'll mention a little bit further into the video. But I want to get all this stuff done so that I can get the tank and tail section boxed up because it's going to another YouTube channel to get painted. So the reason for leaving the sump off up until now on this model is purely to try and get this engine inside the frame a lot easier. I showed that process on episode 1 of the final assembly, but if you saw me trying to get this engine out of the frame, that was a different story. It was a lot harder to do, and I found that leaving the sump off makes the process a lot easier because you don't have to manipulate it so much to get it in and out. So here's a cool little tip that I use just to get these to stay in place whilst I'm putting the exhaust up, because it's on an angle, so if I put them in there, they're going to naturally want to fall out while I'm trying to get the exhaust in place. I just put a tiny little bit of grease on one of the sides and push them up there, and it keeps them there just long enough. It'll burn off as soon as you pretty much start the bike, so I'm not too worried about that. It just keeps it there just momentarily. So what I'm doing here is I'm following the line of the front of the frame, which is also the exhaust line. I'm using a digital angle finder to try and get that line perfect. I might manipulate it a little bit more, but I put a little bit of orange tape just on the tank so I can stand back and just sort of find out if that's where I want it. So I spent a bit of time yesterday tidying up some of the wiring, and I've still got to pretty much loom all this here. and a little bit tidying up here, but all the earths are looking pretty neat. And after doing that, I noticed that there was a puddle under the bike, which there definitely shouldn't be. You can probably see it just there. And it's not water, which I initially thought. It's actually oil. Try to trace it up to try and find out where it's coming from, but I'll need to take this cover off to try and figure out exactly. So behind that cover is this guy here, and it's got an oil seal. This is the shaft where the front sprocket sits, and for some weird reason it's leaking. It looks like it's leaking from the seal, and it looks like it's running down here and running and dripping where you can see. I don't know 100% because it's really hard to see up in there with a torch. Now let's get this cover off and find out. So it looks like it's exactly as I explained, and it's this seal here, which isn't a huge drama because I can take this cover off and replace that seal, so it's not a huge thing. I don't have to take the engine out by the look of it, but the question is, why is it leaking? It's brand new, it should not be leaking. I might just spin the wheel, the back wheel, and see if I can find out, clean this up first and then spin the back wheel and see if there might be some gunk or something on that shaft, paint or something it's causing. I don't know. I'm not really at a loss here. I can't figure out why this is leaked with its all brand new painted up cleaned parts, but get to the bottom of it soon and we'll get it all fixed up. So this bike is so close to being finished, and I've made a few small changes which I'll mention in a second. I've done all of the tidying up of the wiring under the seat, and I've posted that picture on Instagram, and I cannot believe how many amazing comments I got just from that post alone. If you want to see some really good content on how to wire a motorcycle, definitely go and check out Taylor from Classic Octane. His videos are quite good when it comes to wiring. It breaks it down for you so you can understand. I'll leave his link in the description below. So with the wiring, I've made an earth bus here just to sort of have all of the earth separate rather than just being all tied into one bolt, which looks pretty messy, I think. So that's one thing that I did. I've done a full explanation on the Mo Unit Blue. If you haven't seen that video, I'll leave that at the end. Also another video I did with the wireless taillight, because the taillight actually is in the seat, so I can take the seat on and off and don't have to worry about the wiring. That's a really good video, definitely check that one out. So the rear foot pegs have an integrated taillight in them as well, which I've done a full video on how to build this thing. To keep these wires working as tidy as possible, I've actually run them up through the inside of the frame. I'm actually also going to make a new pin for that there, stainless one. So the wires go up through here, and you can see that I've drilled a hole and just pretty much grommeted it with a rubber grommet, just so it's the only real way to get it through there. Drill a hole and then run the wires up through here, and they go into the frame on both sides, and I've used a rubber grommet, as you can see just there as well, because that's on the other side. Another change that I've made is I've replaced all of the engine bolts with high tensile zinc plated bolts. The original OEM ones were great, but unfortunately somebody over tightened them and snapped a couple. So I needed to replace them. These guys I've actually thrown on the buffer and polished them up, and they come up pretty good. I put some high quality brake fluid in the rear brakes, and I've bled them up so they're all ready to roll. I've replaced and tidied up the front brake lines, as you can see, and they look quite smart. The ones that were on it, unfortunately, when I took it for a spin, I didn't have them tied back, and they touched the tire and took off the coating, so I didn't want that. And the last change that I'm making is removing this reservoir, because it's just a little bit too tall. I can't get it any lower, and it's too big. So I'm going to replace it with a bit of tube. Probably not suitable for all builds, but for me it's going to be perfect. I'm going to chop it there, cap it, really minimalistic. If you've never bled a set of brakes before, it's quite an easy procedure. Just remember a few things. Connect a hose to the bottom nipple, cover the entire bike with a rag or an old towel, and then just remember this procedure. Fill up the reservoir and make sure it doesn't drain, and then pump the lever, crack the nipple, close the nipple, release the lever. So it's pump, crack, close, release, and that's pretty much it. All you're ultimately doing is trying to remove all of the air out of the system. So any of the tiny little bubbles, just make sure they're completely gone. Just keep pumping the fluid through until you see no more bubbles, and then you're good to go. So a quick little update of this leak that I had. As you can see, it is completely clean. It's been overnight. I've spun this shaft around quite a bit and it's not showing any signs of leaking. So I don't know what's happened. There's plenty of oil in there. I guess I'm just gonna have to monitor it and see what's going on. If you've enjoyed this video, definitely go and check out this playlist that I made of those videos that I mentioned earlier on that I know you're gonna love.